Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Technical and Business Communication. This is lecture number 14, and today we will discuss about the examples of short reports. The outline I have prepared for you is the different type of short and informal reports. Then we will see the situations in which a particular report is needed and what are the customization in each type of report. There will be some examples that we go through for different type of reports, and then we will explore a progress report prepared by a student through a proper writing process. So all type of short informal reports must provide the identification information. They will also provide the introduction. They will have a very important discussion section, and then the value added conclusion or recommendation. Note that this is the value addition that you bring to the company that you are working for. But since these are all common aspects of a report, but the customization is needed. Common reports include incident reports, investigation reports, trip reports. You may write progress reports, some experimental or lab reports, feasibility or minutes of meeting, and many more situations. So the first one is incident report. Incident report is about some kind of a problem which was unexpected. For example, for God forbid an accident, equipment malfunctioning, injury. These are all unwanted things or an employee bad behavior. In some companies, they are also called accident report or trouble report. The criteria for incident report include: when you write the introduction, you should provide a purpose statement that when and where that accident occurred and the personnel involved. Then comes the discussion. Use subheadings, itemization, quantify what you saw, organize your contents, and provide the specific details. Next comes the conclusion or recommendation. Explain what caused the problem and what can be done in the future to avoid the similar problem. Now, some examples of incidents. For example, in sales, one of your sales representatives have been involved in a car accident while on job related travel. Now, the sales representative or his or her supervisor must document this problem. This is the situation in which you have to write an incident report. The second can be, for example, a biomedical technology. A CAT scan in the radiology department is not functioning correctly. This has led to department's inability to read X-rays. To avoid similar problems, you need to report this incident. Similarly, hospitality management. An oven in your restaurant caught fire, an accident. This not only injured one of your cooks, but also damaged the oven, requiring that it will be replaced with more fire resistant equipment. And another example on retail. So the criteria with all these explanations are important when you are writing for the incident report, that you need to provide the introduction with a clear purpose and persona who was involved, what role do you play in this report, and why you are involved in this activity. Then comes the discussion, the body, the findings, agenda, and work accomplished. So you have to provide all the information. For example, which equipment was involved in it, make and model. Did you contact any hospital or police department? Names of the witnesses, testimonies of extent of the damage, financial and physical, graphics that can depict the incident visually, and follow-up action that you took to solve the problem. Finally comes the conclusion and recommendation. In conclusion, you explain what caused the problem, and in recommendation, you try to tell what should be done in future to avoid the problem. Now here is an example. All the short reports or informal reports can be provided either in email format or a memo format or a letter format. So this is an email incident report about a security breach. So initially there is a purpose of the report, then you show what resulted due to this security breach, then provide a solution of the security breach, and finally after the recommendation you put your signatures. Investigation reports, the second one. An investigation report asks you to examine the causes behind an accident. For example, for the previous cases, there might be required an investigation report against your previous report that you provided here as incident report. So investigation report will try to find the causes, and the criteria may include, in introduction, you mention the purpose, indicate the location of occurrences, personnel involved, and who authorized the investigation. Then comes the discussion about, you have to emphasize on your findings, you have to document all the findings. And finally the conclusion, explain what you have learned from your findings, what changes are required to prevent a future incident. Example of investigation may include, for example, the security, an engineering issue, a medicine issue. For example, in engineering, a historic 100-year-old bridge crossing your city's river is buckling. The left lane is now 2 inches higher than the right lane, and expansion joints are separating beyond acceptable specification. Now you must visit the the bridge site, inspect the damage, and report the causes for this construction flaw. So to have an effective investigation report, the things you have to mention, the things that you have to include in the purpose is clearly indicating the incident, the dates, the location, where did the incident occur, the personnel involved in it, and authorization, who recommended or suggested that you investigate on the problem, who gave you the authority to provide this investigation. Then comes the discussion. Now in discussion you must include, or you can include, a review of your observations, the physical evidences that you found, some kind of testimony and interviews that you conducted, the answers of the reported questions, contacts, people you interviewed, what kind of difficulties you found, and the techniques and equipment that you use during the investigation. So this is all about encircling around the investigation, and then you provide them in chronological order, because this is an event, so they should be in a chronological order. Finally you provide the conclusion about your accomplishments, what are your learnings, and whose fault is important to discover. And then finally the conclusion as well, about the what do you suggest next, should the changes be made in the personnel or approach, or there is another particular situation, what is preferred follow-up, and how can the problem be fixed. So this way, if you follow all these steps, you will end up with a very good effective investigation report. Next comes the trip report. A trip report allows you to report some kind of a job related travel. Of course in university you also visit some industry, so there also you can write a trip report. So for the criteria of trip report, you have to mention clearly the dates and destination of your travel, and you also indicate who authorized the travel and who you traveled with. And discussion will lead to all your activities during the trip. A recommendation shows what you have accomplished, what mainly you learned about from this trip, and what do you suggest as a result of the trip. Now, for example, for regarding information technology, one scenario can be you go to a conference to learn about the latest hardware and software technologies for the workplace. There, you meet with vendors and participate in hands-on technology workshops and learn what other companies are doing to manage their technology needs. So when upon your return, when you return, you write a trip report documenting your activities that will bring the information to other people. In heating, ventilation, and air conditioning scenario, one of your clients is building an office site, and your company has been hired to install their heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system. So you travel to your client's home office to meet with other contractors, which can be from engineering or architectural. So all team members can agree on the construction plan, and at the conclusion of your job related travel, you will write a trip report about your meeting and the findings. Then comes the progress report. Of course, the progress report will be about some kind of a status about an activity or a project that will clearly highlight what has been accomplished and what work is remaining. So these are the two very crucial important things. So the criteria again, in terms of the introduction, you clearly state the objective of the activity, and you mention that whom you are working on the project. Remind your you have to remind as well about your it is about the accomplishments that you already have done, so previous work. Then in the discussion, you clearly mention that uh, the work accomplished, number one, the problems encountered, this is 2, and the work remaining, this is 3. And finally, in the conclusion or sum up whatever you have achieved during this period, you provide the target completion date, and if there are some problems, you mention them about the personals, budget, materials, whatever, to meet your deadline. So example of a progress report is due, for example, in this case, a biotechnology case, you and your team are developing a new heart monitor. This entails researching, patenting, building, testing, marketing. So, and you have been working on this project for some months. What is your status that you have to show? A progress report will tell your investors and supervisors where you stand right now, and if you are on the schedule or when the project will be concluded. So to write an effective progress report, uh, the things that you have to rationalize are: why are you working on this project, what problems motivated the project. In the objectives, you clearly mention what are the objectives of this project. Personals involved whom you are working with this project, previous activity, what the if this is the second, third, or fourth report in series, remind your reader what work has already been accomplished. Bring them up to date with the background data or the reference to the previous reports. And then in the discussion, you clearly mention the work accomplished and the problems encountered, the work remaining, and finally the conclusion about the sum up and the if and the recommendation about completing the project on time. And so if you follow all these steps when you are writing a progress report, you will end up with a very effective progress report. This is an example of a progress report in memo format. We see that this is the memo format, so because of the memo format, you use it clearly from from, date, and the subject. Then you provided the purpose of the report, the work accomplished, the problems encountered, the work remaining, and the project completion and recommendations. And finally, you use some graphics to as a Gantt chart to clearly highlight what has been done and what is remaining. In lab reports, they are about the status and the findings from an experiment. So since this is an experiment, so it is important to mention clearly the procedure as well. So in the criteria of the lab report or a test report, you clearly indicate the reason behind this test and the objectives that you are targeting and who authorized you to work on this. Then in discussion, you clearly mention the apparatus and the procedures that you used, and in conclusions you try to highlight you present basically your findings, indicate what you have learned from the test outcomes, and then you clearly mention the follow-up next actions. So for a successful lab report, you clearly provide a rational objectives, authorization. In discussion, you clearly tell about the apparatus that you use, the procedures that you followed, and finally in conclusion you share about your findings and your learning outcomes. In the end, the recommendation will show what will be the outcome or the follow-up action after this report. The feasibility report or recommendation reports are quite important. Feasibility reports actually accomplish two goals. Number one, uh, they study the practicality of some kind of a proposed plan or an idea. The second thing it is they recommend the action. Why this is important, you will see in the introduction. For the criteria in introduction, you show the intent of the report, the problems due to which you are working on this feasibility report, and personnel involved in it. And discussion will clearly state the criteria upon which your recommendation will be based, and you share your findings against that criteria. So there is one thing, criteria, and then your findings, and finally the conclusion, which state the significance about your findings, and then based on the significance of your findings you draw a conclusion and give a course of action. For example, a scenario for in the scenario in which the feasibility report might be needed is, for example, manufacturing. So your company is considering the purchase of some new equipment, but is concerned that the machinery will be too expensive, maybe the wrong size for your facility, incapable of performing your desired task. So you need to, now you might be given the opportunity to find out and write a feasibility report that you need to research and analyze the options which are available, and then you will determine which equipment will best suit your company's needs, and then you recommend the purchase. In health management, for example, these are the current days, it is the time to update your health information system as we are going through the crisis of corona virus. With increasing complex insurance and regulatory changes, your current system is outdated. That we have seen that the whole world has somehow, the health system has collapsed somehow. What are the options now? So what could install the software to help the code, classify the patient's record. You could hire consultants to help comply with inpatient and outpatient regulations. So you see, in this scenario, we have to find and write about a feasibility of some other options. You could outsource, for example, some patients should be outsourced to home health agencies, and you could upgrade your intranet system to provide decision makers. And so the feasibility report will study the options before you recommend any changes. So writing a effective feasibility report requires much. Feasibility report will have a bunch of clear objectives. Okay, in case of feasibility report, there are some justifying objectives that will enable you to write a feasibility report. Personnel involved, discussion. Now in discussion there will be two things. Number one is that you set the criteria. You state the criteria upon which your recommendations will be based on. The criteria are established first logically. For example, the personnel's cost, vendors, and options, schedules, and so on. And then you do the analysis. In this analysis section, you actually compare your findings against the criteria. You match with the desired criteria, and you objectively write some paragraphs. You develop points to consider. After that, you provide the conclusion about your findings, and based on the findings you draw some kind of recommendation. This is the added value or a game changer when in your good recommendation, for example here, uh, you say, for example, state that Tim is the best candidate for the director of personnel. Now this is the recommend conclusion, and the side 3 is the superior choice for our new location. These are like the points, they can make a big value to what you are doing or the company. So once you have drawn your conclusions, the next step is to recommend a course of action. Now we have these two. So what you suggest that would company do next. So which piece of equipment you are going to purchase, who should be hired next, who will be promoted, and so on. So this is the value addition that you bring to the company. These are very important. If this is not in the feasibility report, this is not a very good feasibility report. Now we go through the writing process at work. Imagine that you are given a task of writing a report, and then you have this process. So the first step will be the pre-writing, the second will be when you are writing, the third will be rewriting. In the first pre-writing, recall that we discussed that we have to find out that we are going to write just to inform, analyze, or persuade. So there are 3 purposes. So this is the purpose of your report. We should know the purpose of the report, number 1. The second thing is determine your audience, who you are going to write for. Audience is the second, whether this report is for the low tech or the high tech, internal or external. So the audience is the second thing. Then you have to choose appropriate communication channel. Either you are going to write in terms of letter, memo, email, which format you are going to write. And then you finally you research your topic and gather information. You actually do it. In the second stage, you are done with the pre-writing. In the second stage, you organize. Now you have things. So you organize your contents based on either problem solution method, or argument persuasion method, or chronological method. So you decide on how you are going to organize your contents. Then you use figures and tables so that the things will be very clear to the reader. And finally, you use some headings and talking headings so that whoever is reading the material, your report, they will comfortably get all the idea. And then you present this thing to your colleagues. You can get and improve. So this revision needs someone, a second eye, for example. So in rewriting, actually what you do is either you yourself go through your whatever you have done here. In the second stage, you review it, and after review you remove and improve it. For example, you need to add few details, delete wordiness, you simplify words, you improve your tone, you reformat your text, and proofread. Of course, after this third step, your whole report will be ready. So this is called the writing process at work. If you follow this, you will end up with very good effective reports. Now there is an example of a student who is doing a project, and now they are asking for a progress report. So in the pre-writing stage, the student has to simply put the outline to gather the information and data. So what she did here is say this is a sales. So the purpose is this sales proposal to the Round Rock hospital, and this may be against when they may request, okay, on October 10th that we need a progress report. And what about the sales proposal to the hospital? Okay, why? Because you are going to write this in response to the memo that you received on 10th October regarding this. So in discussion, the points to cover will be containers, sterilization, documentation, cost, disposal, and what's next, the future work requirements, and then the conclusions about how much has been complete. So it is being 50% complete, and recommendations to comply with the regulations. So this is the first pre-writing stage. After that, she was able to bring a draft. So she drafted her report, progress report, focusing on the information she discovered or outlined in the pre-writing. And after drafting the report, she submitted to a peer-reviewed group, and they will help her to revise and edit the text. So this is the one draft report, the draft progress report that she submitted um, in the memo format. So this is what they found: omit the period and clarify the topic of this report. See, the progress report is not like a good option title. We are not very clear about it, what the report is all about. It's only a progress report, and also the period must be removed. And the second sentence in the paragraph, the second sentence above is long. Remember, so this is long. If we go through this one, the objective of this proposal is the sale of a total program for infectious waste control and disposal to a Round Rock hospital. It may be it's quite long, may be confusing, so you have to improve this one. Things is a weak word, remove it. Boldface headings will emphasize the headings are not boldface, so they mention clearly that these headings should be boldface. Okay. So after this review, the student drafted her progress report, focusing on the information she discovered in the pre-writing. And after drafting this, the student submitted the report for the peer reviewed, and they reviewed it. And finally, okay, and this is the second part, in which see the spelling error here. And for example, here, why is this one? Why is there an empty cell in the graphic? So after having this kind of review, she went again and written few things again, rewritten. Subject, for example, is here. Now the progress report on, clearly mentioning that Round Rock Hospital. And the second sentence is also improved. This proposal will present Round Rock Hospital our total program for infectious waste control and disposal. This is an improved version. And also, if you notice that the headings which were not clear are now very prominent by boldface and the font. So purpose of the report, the work completed, and work remaining. And finally, also this is now improved with the, you see, by the removal of this. This is a very good progress chart now. So the finished progress report looks like a very nice one. You can see a very good progress report. Of course, you will be for your final year projects or other projects, whatever you do, you should be able to write these kind of reports, but you have to follow the system or the process that we just studied. So the lecture highlights, they include what we studied about. The reports are used to document many different occurrences on job, and written to both internal and external audiences. Then we found that the headings and talking headings, they are very good for our report in designing it properly. Email, letters, memos are effective communication channels for the short and informal reports. Effective reports: progress report, recount, work accomplished, and work remaining on a project. This is important. Lab reports document the findings for a lab analysis. Feasibility reports are used to determine the viability of a proposed project. Graphics help your audience understand and assess the contents in a better way. An incident report documents an unexpected problem that has occurred. Investigation report asks you to examine the causes behind an incident. And a trip report allows you to report on job travel related travel. So the possible questions can be, what are the purposes of a report? What are the common types of short and informal reports? When do you write a feasibility or recommendation report? And how do visual aids assist the reader in a report? And when do you write an investigation report? Thank you very much. This ends this lecture, and I hope you have learned a lot, and this will be a good companion for you in your job and other report writing activities. Thank you very much.